Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Horizon podcast. I'm hyped on number 15. Now, 14 and 15 were a series. And so if you're not subscribed, you may not have known that. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, like, comment, make sure to share this with somebody who'd get something out of it. But the series is on something called situational leadership. And it has to do with when you go into anything new, whether it was your choice or it was just put upon you, a new job, a new relationship, a new purchase with a payment, a child, a goal that you set out after, you're going to go through 4 stages of situational leadership. Now, last week, I talked about being the explorer. This is what I call the person who set the goal, who's in the phase of going through the process of trying to accomplish getting better at this thing and doing it, right? And we went through those 4 stages. You've got D1, which is you're coming in and you are highly committed, but your competence is low. It's something you're new at, but it doesn't matter. You're all in, you're hyped, you're fired up, and you're going after it. The second phase, D2, is now you're actually beginning to recognize what you don't know, and this is much harder than you anticipated. So your commitment is starting to fleet. You're wondering whether you should continue because your competence is also low. So low commitment, low competence. Then you start to progress. You make it through. You don't give up. You keep going and you go into D3. D3 is the point at which you have increasing competence, and this gives you renewed commitment. Because with competence comes confidence, and the confidence helps you commit. And then the 4th stage is D4, and this is where you have ownership over it. You have gone through that whole process, and you now can anticipate problems before they happen. You're good. You're a leader in this. Other people can see you as an example. You can actually put your hand down, reach, and help somebody who's in D1, 2, or 3, and pull them up the rungs of the ladder. But it was all from the perspective of the quote-unquote explorer. And so just to give you some candid feedback from me, something I'm going through right now as the explorer is this podcast. Made a decision that I was going to start Beyond the Horizon in the summer. Actually, I thought about it a lot longer than that, and I talked about it, but in the summer, I really made a commitment I was going to do it. And we had episode 1 come out in September. I'm now recording episode 15. And I'll tell you, right now, I think I'm in the D3 stage. I have gone through my period of time where, I was fired up about it, and then I went in, and then I realized this is harder than I thought. And not just to do the podcast, but to carry the podcast and interview people, to carry my thoughts in a way that I think are concise enough that people will listen and still detailed enough where you get something out of it. Learning, getting people on. Like I was like so afraid that like nobody's going to really actually going to want to come and have these conversations with me because who am I? What do I give them? And I've been able to get rid of that limiting belief because I'm now booked out on the podcast all the way out through February and still in conversation with more people. I would say that by the next week or 2, we'll probably be booked 2 months out with conversations. And I may not have as many pop-ins of just me talking to you unless I feel something special I got to drop in there. But anyway, I just want to share with you, like, this is something that I heard. The concept of situational leadership, I heard from one of my regional directors back probably in like 2013. So it's like 13 years ago, I heard about this concept, and over I'm reminded. And the thing I'm currently going through right now is this podcast. So I can appreciate the things I'm telling you. Some of what I'm saying is for me, also for you. But today we get into the leadership side of this. If you're someone who leads other people, then odds are you've made it to D4 in the category you lead others in. And if you're leading people and you're not in D4 yet, and you're leading people in that area, you're kind of blind leading the blind. And I commend you for doing what you got to do, but man, you got to get to D4 so that you can provide them the leadership that they need. And actually on the leadership side, I shared last week, this was developed by Ken Blanchard and Paul Hershey. They label the leadership side with S's, S1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to dive into that today. So let's get to it. Okay, so how great leaders guide people through growth without breaking them. So this whole thing came from the study of why does leadership work sometimes and not other times? And it's because the way that you lead somebody needs to be catered to where they are in their developmental process. You can't apply D4 leadership tactics on somebody who's in D2. You're going to crush them. You're going to force them out. And at the same time, if you try to apply D2 tactics on someone who's a D4, you're going to completely stifle them. You're going to put them in a position where they're going to feel choked out, micromanaged, and they're not going to want to work with you. So you've got to understand the dynamic. How do you work on the leadership side of somebody who's making it through this? Now, leadership doesn't mean that you're a manager of someone else. Well, it does, but it doesn't only mean that. This could be you helping lead and guide your son or daughter through a team sport, a tough situation in life, a new class, a new job, something like that. Working with your spouse, your sibling, and your coworkers, business partners, or whoever. So here we go. Let's dive into it. So clarity before autonomy. Okay. Clarity before autonomy. This is where leaders often hesitate because it feels controlling. We're talking about a person who's in D1. They're brand new, they're fired up, they're committed as all can be, but they're not competent yet in this. And I just want to preface this. If we're talking about, you could have somebody who has some degree of competence, like they might have got hired in the job, their resume said that they were qualified for this, but they didn't do it at your company the way you guys do things, talking to your customers, delivering your specific solutions. Selling a Mercedes might not be the same as selling a Ford, or servicing one if you're a technician. Selling homes in rural Nebraska is not the same as selling homes in Beverly Hills. Okay, so they might have done it, but they're still a D1 in this scenario. And the same thing that maybe you've been a great runner and you're in good shape, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to bodybuild. Okay, so D1 for a follower, direction is kindness. You've got to come in and have a warm heart. You've got to come in and show them clearly that they don't have freedom yet, right? But they're going to get there. They don't have the freedom to navigate and do everything the way they want to. They need to follow the outline, the systems, and the process. Okay? They don't need freedom yet. They need certainty. Somebody in D1 needs to know what works, what has been proven, and they need to be given direction, and they need to be held accountable. So the phase requires from us as leaders clear set expectations on what it looks like to do said thing correctly. I've started doing CrossFit. I've made it through 2 of my entry-level basics fundamentals classes. That's the word I was looking for. And I'll tell you, Josh has critiqued me. He showed me where I don't know what I'm doing. Even though I thought I could do a squat, I didn't do it right. I needed the direction. I needed clear expectations. We need to deliver a step-by-step guide to anybody that we're leading. We need to have defined standards. That person needs to know, where is the line that you must operate within? And anything less than this is not the standard. What's the turnaround time on things? What the speed that things need to happen at? Roughly how many mistakes do you make before it's too many? All of this stuff. And then they need immediate correction. So as the leader, we've got to be watching over them a little bit more closely. You might have to be doing like helicopter mom right now, because you need to catch the mistakes like that so you can switch them. Because practice makes permanent. And if we allow them to practice it too long, we're going to let them start to develop habits that are not in line with the standards. What's actually happening here is the follower is motivated, but they're not skilled yet. And so ambiguity feels like abandonment. They can't feel abandoned. They can't feel like they're in this all on their own, or they'll start to develop resentment. So you got to be there for them. Confidence comes from structure. When somebody knows every step that they need to take next, they can be confident because they know what's next. Now, I can tell you as a leader that I have failed to do this many times. I have put people through situations where I feel like there should just be intuition, that they see it and they can make it happen. Or I have fallen fault to putting people in a position and then simply thinking that they're going to figure out how to make it out the other side, when in fact I'll come back and find that they've not moved to step 2. They've literally sat and waited. Not everybody is built that way, that where they'll just keep going forward and be willing to take action and ask for forgiveness later. And that's a good thing in many cases. But anyways, don't fall subject to that. It doesn't help you as a leader. And I've done it, and I've done it more times than I'd like to be proud of, but I'm committing not to doing that anymore. Because only so many people can be fed from a fire hose without having pure structure to look back on how do they digest and dissect what they were given. So here's what you got to remember as a leader. If you don't tell people exactly what winning looks like, don't be surprised that they lose. That's a quote from Brené Brown. So we got to describe what does winning look like. And as a leader, this is a great opportunity not to just say how I did it, but also to grab other people within your organization, your club, your family, your friend group, and point to those people as examples who are D4s in whatever it is that we're going after right now. Simon Sinek says, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. So we are pursuing something. As a leader, you are trying to drive something forward. These people are in your charge. How do you take care of them? Well, when they're in D1, we've got to give them the resources that they need, give them clear directions, be willing to correct them in a way that does not feel harsh, but kind, and helps them feel like we're in this with them and we want them to succeed. So be specific, not vague. Set the pace. What's this speed we need to be doing these things at? Give them a cadence to follow. You're kind of like the metronome that helps somebody keep that beat, right? We need to set the metronome for them. And then resist the urge to delegate too early. There's a time and a place for delegation. When someone's in D1, you can't delegate too much. You're going to end up being stuck redoing it. And this is where, as a leader, you come to a conclusion where you say, it's just better off if I do it myself. And you take it back and you end up doing it because you delegated it too early and then it didn't get done properly or maybe at all. So you need to hold back the urge to do that. Now, also, this is something I struggled with. Direction is not micromanagement when somebody is still learning. When they're new, they're learning, they need the direction. Now, eventually, if you keep trying to direct every move somebody makes, it's going to feel like micromanagement. Okay, so S1 leadership moves to S2 coaching. And this is for the person who's in D2. Now, if you're leading multiple people, remember, you've got to pay attention that one person might be in D1 and D2, and this is the dynamic that becomes difficult as a leader when you have multiple people. But, okay, stay close when confidence drops. You've got that helicopter view when you're in S1 monitoring a D1. Now, this is more like linking arms with them. You're actually keeping them close. You're sitting right beside them so that you can actually show them how it's done, not just tell them how to correct it. This is the most leadership intense phase and the one most leaders fail at because it takes the most work. It's going to just pull you in a direction where you're going to have to try the hardest and you're going to have to learn how they tick. You've got to really get in there. The person who's going through this exploratory phase isn't lazy, they're discouraged, and you need to recognize that. And so we need to encourage them. We need to fill them up. Their bucket is running dry. So if you pull away here, you're going to lose them. D2 in the exploratory phase is the phase where you become a failure, you give up and you leave. So as a leader, if you're guiding people and you're building a team, then we don't want to lose them because we didn't pour into them enough. We weren't close enough. Now, I also want to warn you as a leader, I have made the mistake more times than I'm willing to admit, holding on to a person where we gave them everything possible during D2, but they didn't renew their commitment. They continued to allow commitment to be fleeting. They allowed their drive to pull away, their motivation to lack. And I kept believing in them more than they were even willing to believe in themselves. And I wasted time. I think that when you're an S2 leadership situation working with a D2, this is also a critical time to determine if freeing their future is what needs to happen, or if there's no way you want to lose this person. So this is a time where it requires high direction and high support. You got to tell them what needs to be done and show them what needs to be done. You need to get in there and let them see it to believe it, right? You need to encourage while holding accountable, teach the why, not just the what. People now in D2, they need more context. It's not just do this, but why do we do it this way? Take the time to peel the layers and actually show them at the core what the purpose is behind this. Because they've seen themselves failing and they're going to be willing to accept the why more, and that why will help them own it and recommit to it. So what's actually happening behind the scenes is that the skill is growing. Confidence is fragile though. I mean, they can be just a slight breeze in the wind is going to push them whatever direction. You need to reinvigorate their confidence and just really give them that backbone that they need and that support that you're here and you believe in them. This is where the most turnover happens. And so Marcus Buckingham says that people don't quit companies, they quit managers. It's so true. And so you don't want people to quit on you. You want to be able to identify where you need to free them for their future, meaning you got to cut the ties and let them go because they're not the right person, or where you need to double down. And I know I said that before, but it's so important and it's so easy as a leader to brush past that. There's this critical point. If you don't catch it, you miss it. So a person who feels appreciated will always do more than what is expected. And so let people be known. I think this is also an area that over the years I have lacked and tried to get better at. And I think it's because I personally I like hearing appreciation and being shown appreciation. It's great, but I'm a highly committed person. And if I said I'm going to do it, I'm typically going to do it regardless if I'm hearing it from other people or not. So it needed to be a learned skill for me to actually go out of my way to show appreciation to people. So as a leader, man, when somebody's in this D2 phase, you want to let them know how much you appreciate what they're willing to go through, because not only does it help you, it's going to help them, but you really understand what they're doing is for the team. And so your responsibility as the leader is to normalize the struggle. Like, people need to understand that this process is going to be challenging. Man, I think back to Neil Brewer that I interviewed. I want to say episode 12. If you've not checked it out, go listen to him. He has a book. The book is called Obedience, Suffering, Reward. And he's talking about how when we're obedient to God, we tend to feel a season of struggle before we get the reward. Well, when you go after your goals, you will feel like you are struggling, right? The struggle is real. And as a leader, we need to normalize that you're going to go through this process. It will not be easy, but it will be worth it. Coach mistakes without shaming, right? Like, nobody wants to feel like they're just being pointed out as the example or shamed for what they did. I know, growing up, friends, we poke fun at each other and stuff like that. But this is a person you're leading. And so you got to be able to correct the mistakes without them feeling bad about it. Celebrate the effort before the results. So have KPIs and celebrate the effort that they're making, because the results are going to come if they don't stop giving up on those efforts. And as a leader, the more somebody has put in effort, the more opportunities you have to critique, hone in on, and help nurture what they're practicing so you make permanent the good skills. So you want to promote the action. Somebody new in our business, I'm celebrating how many conversations they've had, not how many appointments they've booked. In the end, we're holding them accountable to the number of appointments they've booked, but celebrating how many times they've had opportunities to book one is most important now, because that is what will lead to it. We need more of those. And stay emotionally present. Be there with them. Another thing that I'm trying to put myself out there, I have a challenge being empathetic with other people. It's just something that I have to work at and I have to be conscious of. And so if you're a leader like me, D2 is a time to get empathetic, to sit down and tell them that story that you remember when you went through that and how difficult it was, but you made it through. Let them know you know how it feels. You've been there, you've done that. And so if you do this, then you're going to make it through and you'll get to D3. So people don't need you to lower the bar. They need you to help them reach it. So important that we don't adjust our standards and give people a new, lower, easier bar to jump over just because they're having trouble getting there. That is like the equivalent of giving people participation trophies. Okay. I'm all about celebrating the action. You can't lower the bar to letting somebody feel as if they properly achieved what they were going out to achieve and that they won when they didn't, because now you're just giving them a false sense of reality of what's actually needed in real life to make it. Doesn't work that way. Lift them up to the standard. Don't lower the standard to them. What's going on, everyone? Today's episode was brought to you by Policy Engineer Insurance Solutions, a company that my brother and I own and are passionate about helping people with what we call the stable table planning, health, wealth, and legacy planning to give you a stable, predictable retirement. If you want to know more about how we do what we do and what areas we can serve you in, visit policyengineer.com. So if you've done this with that person, odds are they're going to make it into D3, which means you now need to start to embody S3 leadership, which is supporting, okay? Trust builds confidence faster than control does. Trust builds their confidence more than control does. We need to get to a point where they feel that they can be trusted so that they feel like they gain their confidence back. Because remember, D3 is all about them increasing confidence. So by now they can do the work. What they still need is belief. And it's often our belief in them, right? Because D3 is this phase where you have this varying belief. Like one day it's good, one day it's not good. You're going back and forth between, dependent on the experience. They're not yet at a place where they can sit strong that no matter what the weather is like, they will not be blown over. They don't know that. They're worried they're going to get blown over when it's windy. And they need your belief in them. But they know how to do the work. And so over managing here will create some frustration. So under support creates isolation though. So you got to find the balance. You can't like over manage, micromanage, because they're beyond that point. They know how to do the work and they know what needs to be done, but it doesn't mean you can't be present yet. Because if you under support them, they'll just isolate. And they're not at a place yet where they can isolate, be on an island and do this on their own. They're gonna start to potentially cut corners, and they're going to maybe develop a way of doing this that isn't the right way of doing it, because in that D3 phase, they still need your belief, and but they need the space. So it's this dynamic, okay? So here's 3 things you can do. Listen more than telling, okay? Ask questions as a leader. They're in D3. So, hey, what are you feeling now? Hey, you ran 3 cases the other day. What do you think are the areas you could have done different to have made it happen? Hey, a client gave great feedback. How did that make you feel? Hey, you're exceeding beyond what the expectations were in the effort area. How much longer do you think it's going to take for your results to add up and match the same thing? Hey, I know you set a goal to be like that. How long do you think it's going to take you to get there? And what steps do you need from me? Or what help do you need from me to get there? Ask questions so you can listen. Asking instead of directing will create a space of safety. They're going to start to share with you, and they're going to start to open up. And so you kind of need that chase lounge they're laying on, and you're over here with the clipboard. You're creating that setting. And that doesn't need to happen every day, every minute, but these can happen in like weekly audits. So I know I'm speaking a lot in leadership from a standpoint of like business, because that's what I've done, but you should be able to translate these to any other place that you're leading someone. Okay, so let's pull back the curtain and look at what's actually happening to this person who's going through this phase. Well, they have competence now. They actually know what they're doing, and that's a good thing. The motivation is fluctuating, but confidence is internalizing. It's starting to cement. Like every day, it's just firming up more and more and more. So here's what you got to remember as a leader. 2 quotes here. Amy Edmondson says, the best leaders create a culture where people feel safe to speak and strong enough to decide. I think that's powerful. We as leaders need to create spaces and cultures where people feel safe to speak and strong enough to decide. And another one here, Goeth says, treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they are capable of being. I'm going to repeat that. Treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they are capable of being. It's like a leadership standpoint of saying, be the change you want to see. You know, as the action person, you want to be the change you're looking for. As the leader, you want to treat them as if they're there or on their way there. So an S3 leadership, you've got a few responsibilities. One is to invite ownership. You're starting to invite into the fact that they own that role. Like, you've got it, go after it, do it, and acknowledge the fact that the micromanagement has kind of been pulled away because they're following that process. Coach through the questions. When they ask you a question, return it with a question, right? Coaching with questions is awesome because it takes you to such deeper levels of the true root of the issue. So when they come to you and say, hey, what's a good example here? They come to you and they ask, hey, how do I overcome this conflict I'm dealing with at school? Okay, great. I can just give them the answer, but I can turn it and I can ask a question back. and say, okay, well, tell me what you did the last time it happened and give me 3 ideas of what you think would be ways that you can handle it. Let them start to share with you how competent are they actually. Then reinforce your belief in them, that they can go out and then do that. Let them struggle without rescuing. This is like learning how to swim. Obviously, we can't let them drown, but they're going to start to face situations where they've increased the level of the challenge, right? They've gone out a little bit further into the waters. You're still close enough. You could save them, throw them the ring, do whatever, but we've got to let them struggle a little bit. D3 development phase, they have the skill. They just might be comfortable to ask you as the leader to do it. Perfect example would be, there are many times where I will just ask where something is. And I'm trying to cut to the chase, reduce my time in doing something. And I will be answered with, have you looked for it? And I have to admittedly say, no, I just know you know where it is. So can you just tell me where it's at? And it's like, no, you got to look for it. You got to go and go through the process, right? So let people go through that struggle and look for it. So this is where leaders create other leaders. When you get someone that you are leading to move from D3 to D4 and they reach that final stage of development, guess what? Now they're at that stage. They have all of the items that they need to be able to be a leader. Now they have to get in the leadership mindset because doing it for yourself and guiding others isn't the same, but now we get to move into that. So how do you lead a D4? This is where delegation comes into play. So you let go or you become the bottleneck. You give them direction. You can assign and delegate what needs to happen that's inside of their wheelhouse. We give goals and objections of targets that need to be hit, but we've got to let it go or we will become the bottleneck. And the bottleneck will cause it to burst. So the phase is about trust and ego. They are ready. But are you ready to release control? Man, it is hard, especially if it's the first time. If you are in a D4 position and you're for the first time leading someone who's gotten to that point, man, it is hard to let go for the first time, to let control go and not do things on your own, but you've got to. So here's what the phase requires from us as leaders. 1, clear outcomes, not instructions. We're giving targets and we're giving outcomes. We know that they know what to do. We know that they've been practicing what's right. They've made things permanent. They have the chops to make it happen. Give them the outcome you're looking for, not the step-by-step instruction of how to get there. Accountability, not interference. So I don't need to step in and stop somebody what they're doing, but I do need to be able to call them out when they're not on track, hold them accountable. Hey, what's going on? Where are we at? How are you going to get there? You're not where you need to be. You know where you need to be. What's going on? You tell me. If they need help, we'll help. They need a creative outlet, we'll get there. But it's about holding accountable and then respect for autonomy. Somebody who's a D4 wants to start doing things their own way. They want to have the opportunity to put their twist on stuff. They need the autonomy and the freedom, and we've got to respect that or we run the risk of losing them. Now, that doesn't mean that you allow it to go further than what your principles are, than the standards of whatever the organization is. If this is a job, right? It doesn't mean that you allow them so much autonomy that compromised morals and standards as a family. Like, it doesn't mean that, but it means that everybody gets to have their own flavor to this stuff. And when you're a D4, you want to have that ownership. And if you stifle that, you're going to lose them. Okay, what's happening behind the scenes? This person who's going through that exploration, they are now fully capable. In their mind, they're saying, look, everybody's just in my way. Let me roll. They think strategically. They're planning. They're able to actually like execute and use the results and lead towards building the next thing. And they own their results. They don't need to be told when they're failing. A true D4, they know when they are. They own the results. Win, lose, or draw. So what leaders have to remember, okay? A couple of quotes here for you. Lao Tzu, a leader is best when people barely know he exists. When the work is done, the people say, we did it ourselves. David Ogilvy, the best leaders hire people who are better than them and then get out of their way, right? We want to be in a room where we're not the smartest, we're not the fastest, we're not the strongest, we're not the best. Leaders have a skill set of surrounding themselves with people who are actually better than they are, but believe and attach to the vision that the leader created and set after, right? They understand that everybody on board is part of the charge that they're leading, but that everybody on board who's achieved this D4 status is able to do things and they're getting out of the way. So here's the thing. If you want to take on your responsibilities as the S4 leader, you're going to delegate authority, not just tasks. You will get to a point where you will actually give that other person a place of leadership, and that person will have the opportunity where they can begin to delegate. Protect them from unnecessary noise. That person who has a lane and they're running in the lane, they don't need to hear the noise of other things going on. They don't need the office drama. They don't need the pressure of what's happening with money and things behind the scenes in the house. They don't need to know all of the tough stuff that's happening. Keep the noise out of their way and let them keep doing their thing. Let them shine without taking credit. When somebody is doing their thing, let them have the reward and relish in the win. As the leader, you can sit back in silence and know that everything that they're doing is ultimately benefiting the bigger cause that you are leading them in. You don't need the trophy, the recognition, or the word to be about you. So, if you can't let go, you're not leading, you're limiting. But there's an art to it. You can't let go in the early phases or you'll lose them. And if you're never willing to let go, you'll lose them because they're going to feel chained. So here's the hard truth. People don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they're led the same way at every stage. Or as John Wooden said, the best leaders don't create followers, they create more leaders. Situational leadership isn't about control, it's about timing. Lead too hard and you crush the confidence. Lead too soft and you create confusion. But when leadership meets people where they are, growth becomes inevitable. So if we're going into this new year and you want to lead differently, remember that you need to do an analysis and really figure out where people are at. If you've already got people you're leading and you're struggling to get them where they need to go, maybe you do what I'm going to do, which is an evaluation where people provide self-evaluation on the main core skill sets and the outcomes that they're chasing. Hear from your people if they think they're a D1, 2, 3, or 4. In their own eyes, in the areas you consider most important in whatever venture you're leading them in. And then go back and restructure how you will lead using S1, 2, 3, and 4 leadership. Being a leader is not easy, but it is necessary. And doing things by yourself, you might be able to move faster, but anything big and monumental must be done with multiple people, and you're going to have to rely on them. So I'm going to close out in prayer for all of us and ultimately wish you a new year, because this is the last podcast before we go into 2026. So Lord, thank you so much for the opportunity to share on this. You ultimately are our leader and embody all of these things. I just pray that all of us would see that, and going into this new year, if we're leading anyone, that we would recognize that leading them based on where they are in their development is the way to go. And I also would ask that all of us listening to this would realize that we actually are in positions of leadership for more people than we maybe think. There are eyes looking to us as an example in areas of your life that you're not even paying attention to. It's a good time to audit, where are you being looked at as a leader? And are you actually operating in a way that's a true good example? So, Lord, I pray that we make these things about you, and that 2026 goes off and is an incredible year of clarity, an incredible year of great fortune and favor on our lives. And for any of us going through a season that we feel like is not fortune, it's because we're going through the refinement process, and that we could find value in the challenging times, because it is truly the building blocks to the reward on the other side. In Jesus' name, amen.